In a world overrun with the fake, delusional, and disingenuous, he stands as a beacon of truth. He is Abuki Cabal. You are listening to Abuki Cabal.
Welcome to the Abuki Cabal Show.
What's going on, everybody? This is going to be a re-record because I ran into some technical difficulties. I'm going to leave the first one up, but I'm going to go ahead and, maybe I'll take it down. I'm not sure yet. But I'm going to go ahead and re-record this because now I got everything worked out. My audio is back to where it should be. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification button. I appreciate everybody taking out the time to listen to the shows. And we're going to take a look at how Black mothers and grandmothers destroy their daughters once again. All right. And there we are. Okay. And here we go.
Hardly a day passes that someone, struggling with the often conflicting rules of race, as well as curiosity, does not pose the following question: how come Black people are so screwed up? Most people skirt around it. Nonetheless, it does not matter if the approach is indirect or brutally inquisitive. With little concern of offending those from whom they are soliciting information, it rings the same way. The Black community, long regarded as a complicated map of dysfunction, is battling a silent issue: the treatment Black daughters receive at the hands of their Black mothers. It remains a silent issue because, within the Black community, Black mothers are held to such high regard that if anyone speaks out about mistreatment or abuse, they will be the ones who get harped on for speaking the truth. It is known in the Black community how mothers destroy their daughters. In fact,
all right, we'll stop it there for a second. Now, if this isn't your first time on, in this space, or on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, you'll see that there's a never-ending tide of content that's coming across TikTok also, that talks about how bad Black men are, how bad Black fathers are, how non-existent Black fathers are, and there's never any accountability pushed in the way of the mothers who are, the single Black mothers who are supposed to be doing the best job that they can under the circumstances. And we talk about all of the dysfunction that's in the community as a result of Black men not being around and whatnot, as if, these kids are doing okay with these single mothers. These single mothers are also saying that basically they don't want a man around because why should they have a man around when they can make their own money, live their own lifestyles, whatever the case may be, and, if that's the case, if you can do the best job without Black men being present, then why isn't the data showing that the kids are better off with mothers who are at work all the time and who don't have time to raise the children, who, by their own admission, say that they don't want to exist in a family-oriented, structured relationship? Why are we, even debating this? But even more than that, the fact that there is this false belief that these women are without any issues, that these mothers aren't involved in any abuse, that they are not, ruining their daughters by telling their daughters, not to, rely on a man, not to trust a man. All men do is basically engage in sexual assault or some other type of crime against women. They instill this never-ending trope of fear in these girls that they then, when they grow up, rely upon in order to shore up their beliefs that they should stay away from relationships with black men. So we're going to look into a little bit of that with this article and discuss what this black researcher, and she's a female also, came up with through her own dealings with the black community growing up, what she's witnessed, as well as what she's found in her research. Okay.
You can Google the topic and up pops an overflow of topics discussing the relationship between black mothers and their sons. Additionally, most newspaper articles are geared towards talking and emphasizing about how black mothers are destroying their sons. But on the converse, never anyone talking about how they are destroying their daughters. The disturbing and sad reality is that many black women are oftentimes suppressed by their mothers, with negative and discouraging remarks. It could be either mother or grandmother, but either way, daughters are destroyed by their mothers in some way, shape or form, and just cast aside for their brothers. Apparently they are not seen as a priority, which fuels into how many black women are dealing with emotional, mental, financial, and spiritual discord. Many daughters and granddaughters are vulgarized for their career, marital and personal choices, and face a lot of hardship if they make choices that benefit them. Yes.
Okay, I don't see very much of that anymore. That used to be an old thing where you see where the mothers would say, well, why aren't you married? Why aren't you in a relationship? You don't see that now. Now you see more of, just allowing, girls to just do whatever they want to do. They believe that they can be however they want to be. They don't have to have any kind of etiquette. They don't have to have any kind of feminism. Any kind of feminist, well, not feminist, but feminine traits. They can just be however they want to be. They can wear a bunch of wigs and, a bunch of makeup, a bunch of falsehoods in order to try to cover up, the fact that they don't have confidence in themselves. Their self-confidence is bad. Their ability to get along with others is bad. Just everything about them. They're just not well-rounded in being able to interact with people on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of this starts with their mothers, where their mothers are, either colorist, you're too black, they treat you better than the other folks if you're light skinned, all kinds of things that we've had to deal with in our community. And these things all come from these mothers rearing these daughters. Now, there was a time where they, tried to instill these things like etiquette, and, they would go to etiquette classes and whatnot to try to teach them how to be better women, to try to groom them. They were chaperoned when they went to places so that they would be around, the right type of men. Well, all of that's fallen by the wayside, and everything's being blamed on the men and on the fathers. And nothing is a blame is being placed on the mothers who have not taught these women how to be good mates, to be good people, and to do something do things for their community, and not be selfish. But all you hear is more and more selfishness out of these people, young women. So let's move on.
Daughters are the ones who do not have a lot of freedom to enjoy their lives, while everyone else is free to enjoy theirs. Somewhere mom and or grandma are making it hard for that daughter or granddaughter to have a life. It is all right if her brother does what he wants, but she cannot, and if she attempts to do something that improves her life, it's a big problem.
Okay, now let's get into that in a minute. This is where you hear women say it's okay for you to do this because you're a man, but I should be able to do the same thing too. This is that perception to where, everything has to be the same and everybody's equal. Women should not want to do the same things as men do in order for them to feel successful. Women should not morph into the worst possible man in their psyche in order for them to feel like they are respected. But we see this time and time again. They don't interact with people, whether if they're put in a leadership role or a management position. As a woman in a management position, they deal with it as a pseudo man. They run around with masculine tendencies because they think that those are leadership skills. That is not leadership skills. That's just how a man acts when he's in a leadership position. He's not acting any way other than the way he acts. But they see that and they don't know how to act like themselves and be leaders because that's not the way it's actually supposed to be. So it's foreign to them, but this is where this is instilled. Okay. I should be able to do what my brother does. I should be able to do what my husband does. I should be able to do what my boyfriend does. No, you shouldn't. And it's stupid for you to even want that. It's crazy if you'd even want that. So let's move on.
The Black community shields and protects mothers and grandmothers and turns a blind eye to the way daughters and granddaughters are treated. Yet they excuse the behavior of sons and grandsons, no matter how trifling they are. Some of the effects of how mothers and grandmothers treat their daughters and granddaughters are lowered self-esteem, increased self-loathing, developing eating disorders, and decreased socialization. There is little to be said and much unknown about how young Black women are, oftentimes, the casualty of their mother and grandmother's insidious ways. Viewing the level of singlehood of...
Right, let's talk about that. They're the victims of their mothers and grandmothers' insidious ways. So if your mother was out in the streets doing all kind of stuff, she wasn't good with money. She was all out in the streets. She had the worst possible traits, but she got into a relationship with a man who, was only there long enough to be able to, to procreate and to get out of Dodge because he couldn't stand her any longer than that. And then she passes those traits on to her daughter. And then she wonders why her daughter isn't in a relationship. Why her daughter doesn't get along with people, why she's always fighting, talking loud. She doesn't look feminine. She's got a bunch of tattoo sleeves all up both her arms and tattoos all down her legs and all over her back. She can't wear a strappy dress. She can't wear some of the things to some of the other upper level outings, but yes, she expects to have the same outcome as a person who doesn't have all those things, who is feminine, who is, it's like, I look like Beyonce, but you look like, Bathsheba over here in the, in the projects. That's a problem where you expect the same outcomes as a person who does the work when you haven't done anything. You expect the same outcome as a man who has to have totally different traits that you don't have, that you couldn't possibly physically have. So those types of things, so let's move on here. Oh, and this also goes into, the color purpleism of the way Black men are looked upon in this community. These black girls and these women look down upon their grandmothers because they feel like their grandmothers were in these relationships, the ones who were in relationships and who they deem as being docile, that these women are contemptible. My grandmother or my mother was in a relationship and she cooked dinners and did all of that because she didn't know any better, and then we get off into this trope about they couldn't have their own bank accounts. They couldn't go out and do what they wanted to do. Well, I'm going to do it because I'm my own woman. I can do what I want to do. I can say what I want to say. So it's just being a heathen just for the sake of being a heathen, just for the sake of going against what they saw as a life of subservience, to their fathers, their grandfathers, whatever the case may be. And you hear this time and time again. So let's move on.
Young black women also points to how many of them have mothers and grandmothers who discouraged them from dating or had an active hand in destroying their marriage or relationship. It is no guarded secret, but a well-known fact, that more than half of young black women are, in fact, single and have never married. Yet science does not look into the sociological and psychological aspect, into why so many are, in fact, single, and those who deign to take the time to research can literally look at what part a black mother or grandmother played in that woman's single status. From a young age, black women.
Well, I mean, I think there's more to it than that. I think it's how, their mothers bought into white feminism. They bought into this belief system that, we are better than the women who were before us. Will not be, placed into a box. We're going to go get our education. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But see, black women have always worked side by side with black men. Black men had to work. Black women had to work. There's historical evidence that shows that basically, there was a town, I want to say it was in South Carolina, where the mayor told all of these women that they had to work as domestics, even though the women didn't have to work because they had pensions from their husbands being in World War I. Well, they made them work anyway because they wanted, and it said this in the article in the newspaper, that these women could not be fresh for their husbands when they got home if they had to do all of this housework. So they needed domestics. And if these women were not willing to do this domestic work, that they would run them out of town. They would not be allowed to stay in their towns, counties. And even the governor of the state came down and said that he could not protect them and recommended that they work as domestics. So that had nothing to do with black men. Black men provided, went over in a war and died so that they could have protection and possibly a better way of life due to their sacrifice. And you don't hear that. You just hear that these black men were just basically running around like Mister, and that basically they had these women, subjugated in a house somewhere being, abused. But that's not the case. Okay. So these older women bought into this white feminism, and pretty much this indoctrination took place to the point to where it was passed down to their daughters, and their daughters now have a belief system of that things happened historically that did not happen. Not to us anyway. Now, it might have happened to white women, but black women were already working. And when white women wanted to get into the workforce, guess who was there to teach them how to work in the workforce? Black women. So we have to keep that in mind, that this delusional pattern that we're seeing is not substantiated by any kind of historical evidence. Let's move on.
Women are conditioned to learn basic skills in cooking, cleaning, and housekeeping in preparation for marriage. Also, the change in generational norms have also made it possible for many young black women to have more choices in their lives as to whether they further their education or get married and have families. However, when daughters choose things that are beneficial to their lives, it may not sit well with their mothers and grandmothers. The simple reason being that they want them to live their lives according to their mother and grandma, not wanting to be the harbinger of doom and gloom. But many black women fail to realize how their mothers and grandmothers are actually destroying them from the inside out. The needy and oftentimes selfish behavior of many black mothers and grandmothers is obvious by how so many of them seem to look for reasons to keep their daughters on an emotional and psychologically short leash. It is a war in action, because so many women are having to leave home at an early age, merely to escape the psychological and emotional prison in which they find themselves.
Okay, so with this, You find these women who feel like that they don't even have their own identity because they feel like their mothers are constantly trying to tell them what to do. And then guess who they're going to take that out on once you marry them? They're going to take it out on you too, because then you're going to take the place of the mother. And then, they're going to say, oh, you're always telling me what to do. I can't do what I want to do. That's why they see marriage, as bondage or slavery in some way, servitude. They want to get away from underneath their parents, underneath their mom, or get away from underneath their mothers. And then they have this fairy tale belief system about how marriage is going to be. And when it doesn't measure up to that, then they take it out on the men, and they leave at 80% of the people who are applying for divorces. Okay. And then those women ruin their daughters that they have, ruin their offspring, blaming the fathers for the choices that they made. Okay. And, the article talks about this selfishness, and this intrusiveness of these mothers and grandmothers into their daughters' lives, to where they are constantly going in and meddling, to the point to where they have dysfunctional relationships and coping skills for day-to-day activities and day-to-day interactions with people. We see this a lot. Okay. It talks about how they leave home at an early age and just trying to escape the psychological and emotional prison that they feel like they're in. And, how many of you guys have heard, from your girlfriends or your wives, that their mothers told them certain things about men, and that, men are just gonna, when they get older, they're going to, they're going to try to keep you in the house and make sure you're not around anybody, and, and pretty much trying to stifle her existence. I tell these young women not to trust men under any circumstances. So they come into the relationship not trusting you from the jump. Looking for something bad to happen before anything ever happens. Okay. And even if something is bad in relationship that they feel like is like a deal breaker, they're going to try to find some way to blame it on you, or for you to make the decision to get out of the relationship so that they can blame it on you, even though they know that it was something that they didn't like from day one. And if you know that you're unable to forgive that man, or to get over something that is something that's caused a problem in the relationship, then don't you have a duty to be honest about that and to just basically get out of the relationship instead of stringing that man along? But we find that that's not the case. It's like that kind of behavior is not even encouraged. We already see that holding oneself accountable in any way is not something that is commonplace in the Black community with regard to Black women. And I would say with Black men too. We all need to be able to hold ourselves accountable and to have these hard conversations instead of shying away from these hard conversations in order to evade conflict. It's not healthy. So let's move on.
This may emanate from the fact that their mothers and grandmothers came from generations where there was not much of a choice, with the only option being to marry and have babies. They did not have the choice of attending school or having a career. Such a situation could also spur jealousy and envy, where they wish that they
didn't have the choice of having having a career or attending school. But we know that women did go to schools. A lot of these reasons why they weren't able to go to school and have these careers were economic. This was the economic climate of the day. You can't expect to have the same opportunities in this economy as in an agrarian economy like in the past. Each generation has had an uptick in their abilities from the early 1900s up to today. We are more digital today than we were in the 80s. We are more technically proficient, and everything is technical nowadays. A lot of people didn't even have the education to even deal with these types of things from the 70s to the 80s. From the 80s to the 90s, we started making these leaps and bounds to deal with different types of economies, different types of jobs. Things opened up for each generation. So it's unrealistic to look back at your mother's time, and say what she wasn't able to do. Well, one thing that they were able to do is they raised you well enough on a lot less. And you can't see anything but contempt about the situation that they were in which they raised you. You have people nowadays who basically all these kids think about is luxury and having, walls full of shoes, and they are not concerned with just having what they need. They want abundance. And we have to look at that in a realistic way. What do we need to survive? Do we need all of this, grandiose expenditures in order for us to be happy? Because a lot of this is wasteful. We hold in contempt things like families, but no society will exist without families. You see everything in this society moving towards individualistic needs, wants, and desires instead of encouraging people to be in families. We don't even all our tax breaks are just for frivolity. We need to ensure that we have a positive family base in this country, as well as ensuring that family values are preserved. But we don't see that. We don't even see that in our women. It used to be women cared about raising children, about having families, about it. You hear more about preserving families from men than you hear from black women nowadays. But let's move on.
Had more options in their lives, but instead seem to find it easier to hold in check their daughters and granddaughters from getting ahead in life. The struggle of a black woman is more about trying to increase her chances at opportunities that she has been discouraged from pursuing. Because she is always engaged in dodging and ducking the negative remarks of her mother and or grandmother. It gives the impression as if the young woman is not listening, is non-compliant, and she will be presented to the family as being disobedient and a troublemaker. The behavior of mothers and grandmothers is an issue that needs to be openly addressed, instead of being swept under the rug. Where does it leave a lot of young black women, who are struggling to get ahead, but are having instead to put some distance between themselves and their mothers and grandmothers? Regrettably, many are undermined by their mothers and grandmothers and are painted as perpetual failures if they do not follow the career path, date a certain man, and live life by the terms of others. A black woman's happiness is of no consequence with their mother and grandmothers. It is a much larger issue than many really think, and if you think about it, a lot of this behavior is gradually conditioned into girls, growing up, and when they become adults, no longer can the issue remain at rest. The time has come for it to be addressed. When mothers, grandmothers, and daughters' unity is maintained, then an entire community stands to gain. A luta, the struggle continues.
Okay. What'd you guys think about that? This isn't as good a job as I did on the first one. I wish you guys could hear that. If you have a good enough, system, you should be able to turn it up and be able to still hear my commentary. But this is a second, try at this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments on it regarding this article and what you think about it, then hit me up in the comments and we can chop it up. So you guys have a good night, and let me do this. And like I said, if you have any comments, anything you want to discuss about this, then we can definitely talk about it. And I appreciate you guys checking me out again on this, and also all the support you guys give me. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.
I feel a motherless child, a long way from home.